Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
And we are back here at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And I am your host, Ryan Basulto. Today we got a lot of good stuff to talk about. We are going to talk about some of my top 5 at each position now that the draft is done. Rookies are in their spot. We already talked about the winners and losers, but we'll talk about where I rank them fantasy-wise going into next year because of their respective teams. I gave you the top 10 on the last episode, the top 10 rookies, just in total. I just threw them all together and bunched them all up in all skill positions, quarterbacks, everything. This time it's just going to be broken down top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 tight ends. We won't do tight ends because it's only Kyle Pitts. And top 5 receivers and running backs. We are going to start off first, though, and we'll do some NFL previews as well over some of these fantasy teams. But first, we are going to start off with the guy who stole the show during draft day. And it wasn't any of the draftees. It was Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is saying that he does not want to be on the Green Bay Packers anymore. He's becoming more and more wary as the days are going on. Different things are coming out. The newest thing is that he's calling the GM that he wants fired. Otherwise, he's going to, quote-unquote, either retire or demand to get traded. But once again, it's up to the Packers if they want to trade him. The GM, he was comparing him to Jerry Krause. Jerry Krause was a longtime Bulls owner during the Michael Jordan era and all those championships. So Jerry Krause, if you didn't know, he liked to credit himself a lot with building that championship team. Jordan credits himself because he's the almighty Jordan, and of course. But this isn't about basketball, but just to give you context, just Jerry Krause was someone that Michael Jordan would always clown on, rip on, and he would, talk about his stature, talk about physical attributes about him, just yada, 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 everything else. And he just didn't have a good relationship with Jerry Krause because Jerry Krause made it all about himself. Now, fast forward to now, Aaron Rodgers is almost dealing with the same type of situation because even though the Packers have not won a championship, they have went to the NFC Championship the past couple, 2 out of the last, 4 or 5 years. Aaron Rodgers is still playing great. He won MVP. They still gave him a wide receiver 1. Robert Tonyan's not a bad tight end that they just drafted for him. And they gave him a running back 1 in Aaron Jones. And they have A.J. Dillon to back him up. So in a sense, and with Matt LaFleur at coach, who's a really capable coach, and one of Kyle Shanahan's disciples, with all that being said, this guy's kind of thinking, hey, I'm the reason why this whole thing's going to float. I'm the big reason. I drafted, 8 defensive players and 1 quarterback. And that's what's kind of, I guess, holding over his head. That 1 quarterback he drafted 2 years ago, Jordan Love, in the first round, is what kind of started the rumbles and the rumors. And Aaron Rodgers keeps saying that it doesn't matter about Jordan Love because he knows at the end of the day that he is one of the top quarterbacks in the league. He won MVP, so you can't really argue with them. He's 35. He's getting older, but he still looks great. He still gets mobile. He knows how to throw out of the pocket. Aaron Rodgers is amazing. He led the number one fantasy offense next year. They had the most fantasy points in total, no most points in total, 5th most yards, 9th most passing yards. They had the most passing touchdowns and the most touchdowns and best red zone touchdown percentage. You cannot argue against that stuff. Red zone touchdown percentages are so key because you need them to close out when it comes. 20 to 20 guys are cool, like how Lamar Jackson was playing last year, but you need people to close it out in the end zone. End zone's going to get you that extra 6 points. Those touchdowns are what really help you win your fantasy championships. So, Davante Adams went off like crazy last year. Number 1 receiver in fantasy football. 18 touchdowns. Yes, 18. He was getting force-fed by this man, Aaron Rodgers. Over 1,500 yards receiving. Over 100 yards. Over 100 receptions, I mean. It was crazy good. They threw the least amount of interceptions in the NFL. Who do you credit that to? Obviously, Aaron Rodgers. And they had the least amount of turnovers in all of football. All of that is great decisive making, and that's another thing you want with your fantasy football team. You want a gunslinger, a sheriff. You want this guy to be able to manage a whole game. His third down, another key stat, his third down percentage with the Packers was second in the NFL, only behind the Buffalo Bills, and we know how great the Buffalo Bills were last year, but second. So that should show you that they get it done, they move the sticks, so your drives continue longer. You hate it when you're looking at fantasy players and you see that, oh yeah, my guy's finally on the field, and then, oh no, 3 and out. So what happens on the 3 and out? He gains 5 yards, 3 yards, 2 yards, not even a catch, maybe 1 catch. The drive's done, and then what happens? You give it back to the Ravens. You give it back to the Browns. You give it back to the Cardinals. Just teams who like to run the ball, and then they take their time, and then 9 minutes to chew off. And you're like, dang it, it's almost halftime, and my guy's only been on the field twice because of 2 3 and outs. Yeah, so you want to make sure you want a guy on your team that can move the chains, makes great decisions, second in sacks only allowed. So that means he definitely got rid of the ball a lot because credit the line a lot. They have a great line there in Green Bay, but also credit the quarterback because you could hold the ball too long, but those are rookie moves. That's not what Aaron Rodgers does. Aaron Rodgers is one of the top quarterbacks in fantasy. He was the third best quarterback in fantasy football, according to ESPN standard format. Scoring, I don't know how you score with your quarterbacks, but usually the scoring goes a point every 25 yards, 6 points every touchdown, or 4 points every passing touchdown, 6 points every rushing touchdown. Aaron Rodgers is a man possessed, and he can play with the best of them. He can fit in any system, and he is literally one of the top 4 to 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. And that's not even just, he's one of the top 4 to 5. No, he's even one of the top 4 to 5 quarterbacks in fantasy. Because he's going to throw a little bit of turnovers, least turnovers in the league. He's going to throw the most touchdowns, he threw the most touchdowns in the league, which is scoring, which is going away from the negative points, adding the 6 points. And he makes great decisions in the red zone, number 1 in red zone percentage, scoring touchdowns. And he's great at moving the sticks, which prolongs drives, which allows your players to get those lucky plays. Hey, who knows? Maybe if you get that 3rd and 1 on the first drive, at one point you'll be like, hey, how about we throw a bomb to Marquez Valdez-Scantling? We throw a bomb to Tim Patrick. I don't know, another receiver that he could use. They throw a bomb to him. That's a 14-point play, 60-yard touchdown. And all of a sudden, you're like, wow, I was about to lose this week in fantasy by 3. Now I'm projected to win. See? And that's all started with moving the chains. It's all a domino effect when it comes to fantasy football. That's why whenever we talk about anything on the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, you have to break down the analytics. You have to break down how kind of football kind of just works in general. And then that'll kind of gauge, okay, well, this. And then you also got to look at the schedule. It's a bunch of moving parts when it comes to fantasy football. If you don't pay attention to it all, you get lost. And Aaron Rodgers feels lost out there. Matt LaFleur is also confused. He doesn't understand what's going on. And in Green Bay, the way their kind of GM to coach hierarchy works is that the coach doesn't really have a say in the locker room, or even like in the locker room he has a say. Obviously, he's the coach. He doesn't have a say when it comes to drafting. When it comes to drafting, that's the GM, that's the higher-up spot. So Matt LaFleur is just as almost left out of the loop as everyone else. He could give his opinion, Probably says, I want this running back because he's a running type of coach. Kyle Shanahan disciple, as I said before. You always got to think about that. When you think about these coaches, where did they come from? What branch? Did that coach like to throw the ball a lot? Kyle Shanahan, we know what he does on the Niners. Likes to run the ball a lot. That's what Matt LaFleur wants to do. Run the ball. But they're so good with Aaron Rodgers that they have to throw it with them. You just have to do it. So, my point is, I listed Green Bay to be the number 3 pre-draft fantasy offense going into next year. And if they have Aaron Rodgers, if they can mend it, which I give that chance 5% that they mend it. Because it does not look like it's getting good anytime soon, because you also got to think about it this way. All these rumors and everything are coming out. Is Aaron Rodgers denying any of it? Is he going to social media and saying, no, that's not what I'm saying? No, he's just like, he's literally letting the show happen. He's just sitting back and like, wow, I'm going to let this all circulate. And it even almost seems like he's trying to leak some of this information so he could kind of upset the higher-ups and say, hey, you know what? I'm done with this. Oh, you want to know something funny too? Guess how many skill positions in the first round they have drafted for Aaron Rodgers to help him out. Granted, they got lucky on Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, and that means they drafted pretty good late in the draft. But, you know, that first-round guy, you don't know until you try it. And Aaron Rodgers would be able to use a first-round guy really bad. Guess how many guys they've drafted for him? 0. They have drafted 0 guys. Guess how many guys, skill players, the Jaguars have drafted 4 in the first round for recently drafted quarterback Trevor Lawrence? 1 already. They drafted more guys for Trevor Lawrence, who just got drafted a week ago, than Aaron Rodgers in the first round out of all of his career. And you know what, dude? Sometimes you're just in a relationship and you're sick of it. And he seems like he's sick of it, and he's 1 foot out the door. So now, since he's 1 foot out the door, where is he going to go? He had 3 options. 1, San Francisco Niners, match made in heaven. Probably the best offense would have been almost in fantasy football. Would have been a top 2 offense. Would have been better than the Bills to me, because Kyle Shanahan knows how to make great running plays. And if you have Aaron Rodgers just keeping the defense back and keeping them honest, because they have to stay deep, because as soon as he play actions it, you're going to be like, oh, no, he has no receivers. No, he does now. Now he has Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, which are pretty good receivers. Brandon Ayuk is just emerging last year, one of the better fantasy receivers. If I draft him next year, he's like a 4th rounder, in my opinion, going into next year in fantasy football. Just because when he played, he would drop 17 to 20 fantasy points, and that's all you need. He's literally the perfect possession guy. Deebo Samuel gets hurt more often than not, but he's good in a football sense, because if he's out there, he's still a great receiver. He's an aggressive receiver. He's strong. He's built. He could help out with the offense, and that's one more weapon. Aaron Rodgers doesn't mind one more weapon. And then now they have Trey Sermon in the backfield. They have Wayne Gallman in the backfield. Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson. Just a quadruplet of running backs. So, all that, and you haven't even mentioned the best weapon, George Kittle, whose fantasy value would be top 2. Probably better than Darren Waller, just because Aaron Rodgers is going to be like, oh no, I know how great you are. I'm going to use you. So, all that on the Niners would be great if they didn't draft Trey Lance with the 3rd pick. But you could think of like a little trade where maybe the Niners like, hey, we'll give you Jimmy G, and we'll give you like 3 or 4 first rounders, probably. But the problem is, Aaron Rodgers doesn't want any competition. He's got a big ego, and he's not going to take it a backseat to nobody. And the Broncos already know that, so that's why if they probably try to get Aaron Rodgers, they would have to trade Drew Lock. And that's why the San Francisco Niners are unrealistic. But the Broncos have been emerging as of late. They have been stating that Aaron Rodgers is saying that his preferred destination is to go to the Broncos because of the weapons they had. Even he told Rich Eisen. Rich Eisen said it on his podcast. He said, yeah, Aaron Rodgers, that's the number 1 spot he wants to go to. The Broncos. But you know what? My preferred destination is to be on the Golden State Warriors or the Lakers. I would like to be, in Cancun right now, just with a coconut in my hand, just chilling on the beach. That's my preferred destination. So we don't know what's really going to happen. But what we do know is that the Broncos do help out old men when their last 2 Raw championship. And if Aaron Rodgers is old, and he wants a last 2 Raw championship, maybe even 2. He could try to do it like Elway. Elway won his last 2 in his last 2 years of the league. Peyton Manning won his last one in his last year of the league. That's already 2 credible guys, and one just recently happened, so it's still fresh in the memory. So if it was, I'd understand if Peyton Manning didn't do that, and Aaron Rodgers or John Elway just was the one they did it, it'd be too long. You're like, that's kind of a long time ago. I don't know. But if Aaron Rodgers on the Broncos offense, automatically Tim Patrick could be a top 3 round receiver. Along with Cortland Sutton, and Jerry Jeudy would have a lot more value as well. Noah Fant, probably top 5 tight end. Easy. Only people that'd be better than Noah Fant or George Kittle, Darren Waller, and Travis Kelce. If Aaron Rodgers is on the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos would air the ball out. You would think, and what's good too is their running back isn't that, it's all right with Melvin Gordon, but now they have Javonte Williams. So they could do the 2-headed running back system. No one's going to get tired. They could do the same thing they did in Green Bay. And I feel like we'll give them the keys. We'll be like, you know what, dude, you're Peyton Manning, basically. And I think Aaron Rodgers knows too, hey, Peyton Manning was better in the film room, but I think I'm better than Peyton Manning. And intangible-wise, talent-wise, mobility-wise, passer rating-wise, throwing outside the pocket, everything that has to do with new NFL, you would rather probably have Aaron Rodgers over Peyton Manning because Peyton Manning's stiff. He's in the pocket. I mean, he has great IQ, but Aaron Rodgers isn't dumb. The cow kid, he's a host on Jeopardy, which they're saying he should stay as if he keeps asking for these ridiculous requests to be traded. But he's tired. He's tired. Tom Brady even got tired at some point. Big Ben almost got tired with the Steelers when they brought in Mason Rudolph. So Aaron Rodgers doesn't look like he's going to come back to the Packers. So that if Aaron Rodgers isn't the quarterback going into the Packers next year, they drop out of the top 10 in offense to me. Because Aaron Rodgers is just that good. Now the other option, this is the gamble, and that's why I mentioned them last, and it's ironic why they're the gamble. The Las Vegas Raiders. That's another offense. I don't understand why he'd want to go there, but maybe him and John Gruden have like a rapport and an understanding, and since he's a quarterback coach, he would want that. But I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to get yelled at. And knowing the Raiders, I think they would just ruin it. And what are you selling to them? You're saying we have Darren Waller and great running backs? Okay, I have great running backs in Green Bay. What else do you have? You have Darren Waller. Okay, I have Devontae Adams. He runs better routes and he's better in the red zone. What? Well, we have Henry Ruggs and Tyrell Williams and Hunter Renfrow. Okay, so I'm still in Green Bay, is what you're telling me. With a worse line, if anything, because the Raiders are just going all over the place with their linemen. And a worse defense. Even I'm talking myself out of this just by thinking about it. I feel like that's what they're going to say. They're going to try to sell Aaron Rodgers the pitch and halfway be like, oh, wait, why would you come to us? He's like, yeah, you're right. Why would I come to you guys? It would make more sense if he was in Oakland because he's a Bay kid, went to Cal Berkeley, wants to be in the Bay of California. Hey, you know what? Some people want to be out there. But Aaron Rodgers automatically is the biggest Band-Aid slap on any NFL offense. If it's the Broncos, he's making him a top 10. If it's the Raiders, he's making him a top 10 fantasy offense. Darren Waller's going to go absolutely nuts if he went to the Raiders for some reason. It would be crazy just because they want to run the ball. They just got Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs. What do you need Aaron Rodgers for? But what's good is I feel like the reason why is because they're like, well, Derek Carr's a game manager. We don't need a game manager. We need a game changer. That Derek Carr is perfect for like the Rams. The Rams need a game manager because they need someone to not mess it up like Goff did last year because they have the number one defense. They have all the weapons around them. They just need someone, hey, don't mess this up. Okay, there you go. But Aaron Rodgers, give him a less than 5% chance he's coming back. He's going to retire if he has to come back. He doesn't like it. He's really unhappy, and you know what? He's really, really stubborn. And I think he's mean, and I really don't care for his personality too much. But, he's disgruntled, man. He's not happy. And if he goes to the Broncos, I'm not saying because I'm a Broncos fan, I'm going to be happy, but I'm going to be ecstatic. And I'm not saying that they're going to be a top 5 offense just because I'm a Broncos fan. It's realistic. They just literally need a quarterback. And the reason why he wants to go to the Broncos is because he said he likes all their weapons. Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, who's still young and raw and has great route running. Noah Fant, who could be a top 5 tight end. 2 capable running backs. The line got beefed up. We made the defense way better with Patrick Surtain. We added, we have Justin Simmons, who's one of the best safeties in the league. Von Miller, who also is definitely a help that we have Von Miller because of just his credentials and what he's done. One of the best defensive players of all time. But yes, that was Aaron Rodgers Day. Aaron Rodgers made NFL Draft Day all about him. And I just wanted to kind of backtrack on my statement that they're the top 3 offense because I don't want people saying, oh, Aaron Rodgers is gone. They're not top 3 offense. Yeah, I know. It's because Aaron Rodgers is in the offense. Without him, and Jordan Love, they're nothing. They're nothing. They're no better than the I would normally say Browns just because that's the natural team off my head. But they're not better than the Vikings to me. Not even better than the Vikings fantasy offense. So, when we come back, we're going to do some NFL previews. We're going to talk about my favorite guys in the NFL and ranking them. All this and more after this commercial break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, where we can make anyone into a champion. Overnight almost, it seems like. Well, if you cram all the episodes overnight then. But yeah, we're going to break down everything. I like to go over absolutely everything. In the beginning, we were talking about Aaron Rodgers and how he is the ultimate glue, the ultimate Band-Aid, the ultimate fantasy offensive option if he goes to any team. If he doesn't go to that team automatically just drops in fantasy value. If he leaves the Packers, which I think he will, because like I said, all the things that are happening and are transpiring, he is not stepping in and saying, oh no, I didn't say that. Some people be like, oh no, that's just rumors and that's just, the media trying to blow everything out of proportion. But no, he's staying mum about this because he knows that he's the one that's probably spreading a lot of these. So if he goes to the Broncos, they're a top 10 fantasy offense. If he leaves the Packers, they are not a top 10 fantasy offense. If he goes to the Raiders, top 10 fantasy offense again. But I can't see him going to the Raiders. Now, we are going to go over some previews going into the next year. We'll go over some teams because now that the draft is settled, we could see what teams are going to look like now. Before it was all speculation on, what if the Jets get Zach Wilson? If they get Zach Wilson, will that help? What if the Patriots get Mac Jones? Are they going to start him over Cam Newton? A lot of different things, a lot of different factors. We're going to go over a couple teams, and then later on in the show, I will give my top fives of the different NFL rookies. Well, future rookies. And we're going to start off with the football team. They were the first place team from the NFC East. They scored the 8th fewest points in 2020 while also throwing the 8th fewest passing yards. They also rushed the 7th fewest rushing yards on their way to a 7-9 season. And next year they're projected to win about 8 games. They are a pretty decent team, but I like their fantasy offense. I like it a lot, especially now that they added the Fitz. Everyone always keeps forgetting about Fitz Magic. Everyone thinks it's Tyler Heineke's show, but it's the Fitz's show now. And he finally has weapons last year. Like I said, they were 25th in passing yards with 3,645. They were 26th in rushing yards with 1,611. You know their running backs, J.D. McKissick and Antonio Gibson, led that field a lot. And their their total points they scored was 335. The additions that they mainly got this year were Curtis Samuel, so that's the biggest one, and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Over the past 3 seasons, in games, Ryan Fitzpatrick has started and has had at least 20 attempts. He's averaged 20.2 fantasy points. So that's already QB1 numbers. And you already know that he's been on teams like the Bills. He's been on the Seahawks. He's been on the Dolphins. He's been on the Bucks. He's been on all these teams. So you like the veteranship. He's been surrounded around a bunch of different cultures, and none of it has fazed him. The Harvard kid is always slinging rock. Last year, when he was on the Dolphins too, it was good because he also had a mentoring role with Tua, which is what I'm sure they want him to do a little with Tyler Heinicke, because it seems like they want Tyler Heinicke to be a Ryan Fitzpatrick, to be able to throw the deep side ball, and he has a lot of QB1 upside. I feel like Ryan Fitzpatrick could be what I viewed Ryan Tannehill as last year, as I could get him in the later rounds. I could get him probably 11, 12, 13, and he could still probably give me like 20 to 25 fantasy points almost every game. Besides, probably once or twice he'll give me 16. But you think about it too. He's in the NFC East. The Eagles defense, terrible. All they know is how to sack the quarterback, but the Washington football team is already trying to stack up on their linemen. What about the Cowboys? Cowboys had one of the worst defenses last year, 29-3, and in the draft, all they added was they added Micah Parsons, but will he be able to stay healthy the whole year, the Penn State product? And then what about the other team? The Giants, who was trying to revamp their defense, added Adoree Jackson, they are adding people in the draft, but it seems like they're only infatuated with receivers right now. They added Tony from Florida out of the draft. They added, not Tony, sorry, Tooney. My bad. I guess I sound like a cartoon for saying that wrong. Tooney, they added him. They added Kenny Golladay, gave him a crazy fat contract, and they're still holding on to that Saquon hope, even though he's one Bo Jackson step away from completely destroying the rest of his career. So those two teams, I just threw a shot at Saquon for no reason. I'm sorry. But it was mainly to point out that their defenses are terrible and they don't know what direction they're going in. Ryan Fitzpatrick knows what he wants. He's been in the league long enough. The football team knows what they want. They have their identity. Ron Rivera is a tough guy. That's just the type of culture he brings to the football team. And they have great weapons. First weapon, he has Antonio Gibson, who has the size, athleticism, and the elite receiving ability as a running back. He's one of my favorite running backs. He could be in RB1 territory if J.D. McKissick kind of backs off a bit. But it stinks because J.D. McKissick comes in if the football team goes down late most of the time. But Antonio Gibson, granted, that was his rookie year last year, so I don't want to take that all the way to the bank, just for the simple fact that Antonio Gibson is special. I knew he was going to be a Christian McCaffrey type of player as soon as I seen him. Ron Rivera likes to do that with running backs. Oh, hey, how about I just check down the ball? Oh, hey, how about I just check it down again? How about, oh, shoot, let me just check it down. And the problem is Ryan Fitzpatrick isn't really a check down guy. He looks down the field. Most of his throws are over 9 to 10 yards per throw. And that does help out the quarterbacks a lot. But Antonio Gibson, just because Curtis Samuel got added to, which is who I'm going to get to in a bit, he also runs the ball as a running back in certain situations too. So that could take away from Antonio Gibson's touches. But I feel like they know what Antonio Gibson's one of the better running backs in the league. So don't be surprised if he has over 900 yards to 1,000 yards rushing and probably 400 to 500 yards receiving next year with over 10 touchdowns for sure, because he's a ball hawk. I mean, he's not a ball hawk. He's a touchdown machine. And that guy scored 3 touchdowns against the Cowboys, 36 fantasy points, went completely off. And guess what? He plays the Cowboys twice a year. So, he could show and make them – he could show the Cowboys, It's not all Ryan Fitzpatrick cooking you all day. It's going to be also Antonio Gibson in the backfield, and then that'll bring, the linebackers and people to come up in the box more, and then Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to throw deep to this next guy, who is scary Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin has all the potential to be a wide receiver one. He's one of the most targeted wide receivers in the league, and his quarterback is literally the definition of I don't care. I'm just going to sling it. He's Fitzmagic. He slings rock. That's what he does. And last year they didn't get it. They didn't have that. They had Alex Smith and Dwayne Haskins, which is nothing. They play nothing like Ryan Fitzmagic at all. I feel bad because Terry McLaurin still had a great year, but they were 29th in fantasy points last year, and they were 26th in yards. 25th in passing yards last year. They were also 28th in touchdowns too, throwing touchdowns. So the point is, the Washington football team couldn't throw that well last year, and Terry McLaurin was still a top 20 fantasy receiver. Not top 20, top 15 fantasy receiver. But now he has a guy who likes to throw the ball all the time. He throws it deep. We saw it. It was very it was proven when you saw the Raiders versus the Miami Dolphins in the last game of the season when Ryan Fitzpatrick helped them win that game when he was getting his face back, pulled to the side, couldn't even see the player. He literally threw it up on a perfect dime pass to hit the back, almost the back of the end zone, but it was just short. But the player just ran out of bounds, and he couldn't even see the guy. It was just a perfect dime throw that he threw right in the air, like YOLO. I don't care. And that's exactly what he's going to do with Terry McLaurin all year. And the reason why Terry McLaurin's probably going to get more open is now that they added Curtis Samuel around him. He was wide receiver 23 in 2020, and I don't see him, having the best year. Okay, he's going to have 800 yards, 1,000 yards, or whatever. But I think he's a good wide receiver 3 flex play on a week-to-week basis, and he also helps take away some of the attention from Terry McLaurin. And they went to college together, so that could help out in a little bit of the chemistry. And Logan Thomas, he was a tight end 3 last year. I feel like he's gonna be a tight end 4, tight end 5 this next upcoming year because Logan Thomas, if you ever know anything about Ron Rivera offense, he does it simple: wide receiver, tight end, running back, wide receiver, tight end, running back, wide receiver, tight end, running back. That's how he's gonna go with his plays. My running back's going to get all 15 to 20 touches. My wide receiver is going to get 8 to 10 targets. And my tight end is going to get 8 to 10 targets. And that's what Logan Thomas proved at the end of the year. He had a great ending of the year. And he's going to be in the mid tight end 1 option going into next year. But I think that you could look forward to the Washington football offense, especially with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Let's go on to another team if you didn't like them, because I don't like them going into next year, but some people do. The New England Patriots. Depends kind of what you're looking for. The New England Patriots finished 3rd in the AFC East in 2020. New England scored the 6th most points in 2020, but throwing the 3rd fewest passing yards. They also rushed for the 4th most rushing yards to a 7-9 season, and they're projected to win about 9 games last year. I don't know if you could trust Cam Newton going into next year just because they drafted Mac Jones. And now that we saw that, okay, they finally got the quarterback that we kept saying that Bill Belichick kind of just wants to draft. And Cam Newton didn't throw for 10 touchdowns last year. He couldn't even hit double digits in touchdowns. And he only had 17.3 points per game last year. So that kind of just puts him middle of the pack. But he threw for 2,600 yards, 8 touchdowns if you like that. And now they added 2 tight ends, which could help them a lot. We'll get into the tight ends in a bit. But what if Cam Newton gets hurt? What if he runs it a lot? They like to run it with him, run the ball with him, run those heavy set offenses where he just runs behind the tackle and just takes it up the field. Can't be doing that all the time. He's been doing it since the Panthers. He's wearing down. It's really obvious that it's happening. And this is a 1-year, $14 million contract, so he's not going to be there for much longer. The New England Patriots aren't a team that I would really want to focus anybody, wouldn't want anyone to be, from a fantasy perspective, to pick up. But I guess you could focus on the tight ends just a little more. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Everyone hopes, including, I'm pretty sure everyone that's listening to this, not me, I don't see it, but that they're going to resurrect the Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez thing again. But the only problem is that's like once in like a great while, or like a great generation of tight ends. Aaron Hernandez was so athletic, and he was able to basically be a slot receiver and like a running back, which was shown when he killed the Broncos in the playoffs when they had Tim Tebow in the second round on their way to going to a Super Bowl. He could do it all. And then we have Gronkowski, who's one of the tallest, best red zone targets of all time. And if he's one of the best red zone targets of all time, then how is he not the best tight end of all time? That's what you want your tight end to be. Oh, hey, I'm scared. Everyone, the pocket's collapsing. My running backs aren't blocking for me. My receivers stink because I have Kendrick Bourne and N'Keal Harry and Julian Edelman just retired. So now you need a big tight end. Throw it to him right in the middle. There's no volume of touchdowns, and that's the problem. And Jonnu Smith, his touchdown rate was 34.2%, which was third highest out of tight ends last year. But who knows if it could happen again, because like I said, Cam Newton only threw 8 touchdowns last year. You kind of hope that Mac Jones comes in if you want to find fantasy relevance for this offense. Also, when it comes to their running backs, I haven't said it on the show, but I like to call their Bill Belichick with his running backs Bill Bellatrix. I mean, that's what other people call it too, but like that's what I reference to whenever I think of drafting a Bill Belichick running back. Last year I made the mistake again. I don't even know why I did. I thought that Cam Newton, his arm is shot, so he's going to check down to James White all the time. I was wrong. He didn't check down to James White all the time. I had to trade him. I couldn't believe it. Damian Harris isn't one of the best running backs, but he should see some improvement, and he's a good flex value, so you could get him in the later. He's like a 14th, 15th round pick to me, almost the last 2 rounds. You could see Damian Harris, because Damian Harris is going to go against the Jets, but he's going against the Dolphins and the Bills, who have better defenses now twice a year, so that doesn't help his case, even though he had his better games against the Bills, scoring 14 and 15 fantasy points in both games. James White, I don't see the value anymore. His days are gone. I don't know why he even... I know why he resigned with the team. He's a Patriot. It's football stuff. I'm just thinking about it from a fantasy perspective. I'm like, why are you wasting his talent? If he went to the Bucks, this would all be done and over. But no, he didn't go to the Bucks. He stayed with the Patriots, and now look at him, just wasting his talent away. We know what he did. The Patriots were 30th in passing yards last year with 2,800. They were 4th in rushing yards last year with 2,300, like we said. And they were 27th in total points with 326. Cam Newton was averaging 17 points a game. His touchdown rate was only 2.2%, so he really wasn't scoring much, which defeats the whole purpose of having a whole run offense. You want him, if you put the ball in his hands all the time and you want him to run the ball, score the ball. You're a big guy. That's the whole point of you. And if that's not happening, then I don't understand why they wouldn't put Mac Jones, or if Cam Newton gets hurt, just hurry up and be like, oh, well, it's time to get Mac Jones now. Okay, Mac Jones. And Mac Jones, I'm telling you, is no joke. The reason why a lot of teams liked him, and I'm sure that's why Bill Belichick also liked him, was for the fact that he's flexible. He's able to fit in pretty much anybody's system. And if you're thinking of an old man, like I'm talking about Nick Saban on Alabama, old man, oh, I only care about defense. I'm going to be grouchy. We're going to practice 80 million times a year, and you're going to get no love, and I'm not going to baby you and coddle you and do all this stuff. That's Alabama, all right? But that also sounds like Bill Belichick in New England as well. So Mac Jones is used to it. He's used to the tough love. He doesn't care. He just wants to show. And I'm sure now Bill Belichick's mad. Like, that's why he drafted Mac Jones. He is mad at what Tom Brady's doing. He feels like his whole legacy is kind of getting tainted for the simple fact that Tom Brady just left 1 year. It only took him 1 year to go win a Super Bowl somewhere else. Granted, he has a bunch of great weapons, but still, 1 year. That is a big slap in the face to the whole legacy of, oh, was it Bill Belichick? Was it Tom Brady? Most people now are saying it's Tom Brady. I'm saying it's Tom Brady. Bill Belichick is like, no, I made Tom Brady. And you know what, dude? If you're going to do that, I'm just going to make Mac Jones. And then it'll be Mac Jones versus Tom Brady because they play this year, week whatever. Once that happens, he's like, I'll unleash Mac Jones and we'll win. And then if we win, then we'll see who's talking. But I mean, it's too early. If Mac Jones is on the waiver wire, I would think about just picking him up on a flyer. But let a week pass by, because you don't want to let too much pass by, because I feel like Cam Newton's the type of guy you'd be like, oh no, I'll just wait till Cam Newton gets. If you don't want people to get hurt, but you're like, oh, I feel like he might get hurt. I'll just wait till he gets hurt. He's probably going to get hurt soon if he gets hurt. It's not going to be, oh, he's going to take 8 weeks and then he's going to get hurt. Cam Newton, his shoulder hurts, his body hurts, his ribs always hurt because he's getting hit all the time. He's rushed for over. He's rushed over 1,000 times throughout his career. Like, Cam Newton is almost a legit 6'5" running back, and you got to think he's tall. His legs are taking a beating from people tackling him from down low all the time. Cam Newton is not going to be able to sustain this. I don't trust anyone on this offense besides maybe Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith, but still, you never know, and you don't want offenses that don't score that many touchdowns. Patriots, their preview is more of it's a liability waiver. I'm kind of warning you. Don't say I did it. Mac Jones, if Mac Jones comes, he could turn things around. But remember, N'Keal Harry, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, come on now. Yes, when we come back, we're going to do some more team previews, and then I'm going to give you my top rookies that came out of the draft by position, all after this commercial break.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I am still your host, Ryan Basulto, and we are still here on the mission, the journey, the adventure to make you a fantasy football champion next year, because I know I'm going to be. And I'm not in many leagues, so one or two, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be a fantasy champion. But I'm not going to be a fantasy champion with the New England Patriots. I won't do it. Washington football team, more realistically. That's what we were talking about a little while ago. I was giving my team previews. The Washington football team has a better preview to me than the New England Patriots, because the New England Patriots have Cam Newton, who only threw 8 touchdowns, who also has Mac Jones just staring right behind him, just ready, salivating at the mouth, because he's a great system quarterback. That's all Bill Belichick wants. And obviously Cam Newton's not the thrower he needs. So he's going to find it in Mac Jones. Mac Jones is there. He's ready. Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, yes, there's fantasy value. But temper your expectations if you think they're going to be a Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez type of duo. The Washington football team, I like them with Ryan Fitzpatrick. That automatically makes Terry McLaurin a top 10 wide receiver 1 to me. Logan Thomas, top 5 tight end, and Antonio Gibson, wide receiver 1, borderline wide receiver 2. Just because Curtis Samuel, he's going to make the football team better, he's going to stretch out the field better, and he's going to take off some eyes from Terry McLaurin, and that's good for, good in fantasy perspective, but also Curtis Samuel's a gadget player, so sometimes he runs the ball. He ran it 30 times last year for the Carolina Panthers. So he could kind of chew into some of Antonio Gibson's touches. Antonio Gibson averaged 14.5 points per game last year, and he had one of the better touchdown percentages at 32%. So about 1 every 3 games he would score a touchdown, which is pretty good, but that was his rookie year. So now we are going to move on and do another team preview on the New York Jets, or the New Jersey Jets, however you want to call them. They play football in New Jersey. But the New York Jets, they scored the fewest points in all 2020. They couldn't score for anything. They were 31st in passing yards. But big difference. Sam Darnold was a quarterback last year. He is not their quarterback anymore, as they traded him to the Carolina Panthers. And now they have Zach Wilson, quarterback out of BYU. So that should help. That 31st, like I said, 31st, the worst. They were the worst of the worst at throwing the ball. And to be honest with you, the Jets were just the worst of the worst in pretty much all categories. They were worse in red zone touchdowns, red zone touchdown percentage, first down, third down percentage, red zone attempts, and touchdowns. That is awful. These are not stats you want to be the worst in. And they were the worst in fantasy points per game and total points per game with 243 on the year. They were 23rd in rushing with 1,683. But that was because they had the old bull, Frank Gore, back there. And you wouldn't want him in fantasy, but you're just rooting for him as a person because he's a good man, you could tell. He, would always try his hardest, even though he knew his team wasn't the best. He was doing that for the Bills when they weren't good. He's doing that now he was doing that for the Jets. But now they have Tevin Coleman, who only averaged 2.1 points per game last year and didn't score 1 touchdown as he was hurt most of the time. So that's not good. But they added Michael Carter. And Michael Carter should be a better running back. He had 1,000 yards rushing 2 years in a row, which is the rushing isn't too much of a problem for them. It was more the passing. But still, you can't, throw the ball if you can't run the ball first. Because you have to be able to get people, the linebackers, the linemen, everyone on their toes, and or at least stacking the box. So then you could, put it behind the defense and actually make it believable. The Jets don't make anything believable, and they're one of the worst franchises to me. They were last, obviously, in the AFC East. But let's start off with, and they're projected 6.5 wins next year after they went 2-14. But yes, those 6.5 games, I don't know. It's a little too high for me, but we'll see how it goes next year. But they start off with Zach Wilson. Second overall pick, replaced Sam Darnold. And on Pro Football Focus, he was the second-ranked player coming out of the draft. He has great arm talent. His accuracy was amazing at 73.4%, which was second, of course, to Mac Jones. And he can go undrafted, but just keep an eye on him because he does have weapons now. They have Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, Jameson Crowder, Keelan Cole is admirable, and like I said, they added the running back Michael Carter from North Carolina. Javonte Williams is split back, and he was averaging over 7 yards per carry in North Carolina. Michael Carter was. Tevin Coleman isn't as reliable, so I can't trust him. So that's why I'm saying Michael Carter has great fantasy value, probably out of anyone on this offense. I know their line isn't that great, but Michael Carter could kind of, be a little bit of the Band-Aid. Like I said, he averaged 7.9 yards per carry last year. Overall in North Carolina, he averaged 8 yards per carry last year. And he's rushed over 1,000 yards and caught over 200 yards. So he was their third down back because he was able to catch and run the ball more than Javonte Williams was. Zach Wilson, he's probably going to feel pressured. He's going to make sure that he needs to keep that accuracy up because that's the whole thing about him in the draft. Accuracy. He can throw like this. He can throw like this. So he's going to keep it up. So what is he going to do? Check down. Oh, Michael Carter's right there. Check down. Tevin Coleman's right there. Check down. So I like Michael Carter. Tevin Coleman, he's too injury prone. The best ability is availability. We're not going to draft Tevin Coleman at all in this year's fantasy draft. There's also Michael P. Ryan, who's probably going to get some love in the beginning until Michael Carter really shows his, true colors. But I feel like, especially since Zach Wilson and Michael Carter got drafted by the Jets recently and they're part of the same draft class, that's kind of a rapport and kind of a love that they're going to gain with each other. And they'll probably just take it over as, the 1-2 punch in the New York Jets. Like I said, they have Corey Davis now. And I forgot to mention, they just drafted Elijah Moore. The Jets did pretty good. They have a pretty good wide receiving core now because now they have Davis, who caught over 900 yards last year on the Tennessee Titans, and Jamison Crowder, who could be a flex play / wide receiver 3 if it's a PPR formatted league, because he did score double-digit fantasy points 4 weeks in a row at one point. He could score you anywhere from 11 to 18 fantasy points. It's great, and especially since they added Elijah Moore, the Ole Miss receiver, the 5'9", 185-pound receiver. I feel like their receiving core has just gotten a little bit better. The draft helped them out definitely in a lot of aspects. They got rid of Sam Darnold, got Zach Wilson. That's a plus. They don't have Frank Gore, LaMichael P. Ryan, or Balil Powell, whoever, just a bunch of nonsense they have at the running back. They now have Michael Carter. Tevin Coleman's whatever, but Tevin Coleman shows that he can be a good third down pass catching back. So we'll see when healthy. Corey Davis can be a wide receiver 1/2, probably more of a 2. And you add Elijah Moore with Jamison Crowder, who's already a proven slot receiver, along with Denzel Mims, who had a pretty good rookie year last year, but only for over 400 receiving yards. Nothing too special, but it's not his fault. Like I said, the Jets were awful. They were last in absolutely everything, from red zone touchdown percentage all the way to fantasy points and regular points scored just in general. And at the tight end position, they're going to have Chris Herndon. He's a good short mid-area guy, but that's where Crowder and Moore are going to come in a lot. And Tevin Coleman and Michael Carter are probably going to get those checkdowns a lot, so I wouldn't trust Chris Herndon. Only people I would draft on this, Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder, Michael Carter. Only people I like on this. They have a lot of good players, but nothing too great. And their projected wins aren't supposed to be too great as well, so it doesn't look like people have as much faith in them either. They throw 58% of the time and run 42% of the time. So I would imagine that they're going to try to even that out a little more, especially since they got Michael Carter. But I was a little scared with them because Tevin Coleman as a starting running back is definitely not a move at all. The Jets are good, but this team is better. The Miami Dolphins, they were 20th in passing yards last year with 3,736. They were 22nd in rushing yards with 1,688 and 15th in total points with 404. They finished in second place in the AFC East. And they still went 10-6 even with all that stuff. That's how you know their defense is good. 10-6 while being 20th in passing yards and 22nd in rushing yards. You're bottom 15 in both those categories and you still went 10-6 and almost made the playoffs. Almost hats off to you, Dolphins. Almost hats off to you. They had a great year last year, breakout year with Tua. But I'm giving him some criticism. He was outside the top 5 in completion percentage, quarterback rating, yards per attempt, and points per game. But he could be a sneaky late round pick just because he has all the weapons now. Like, he has Will Fuller, Myles Gaston, Devontae Parker's going to come back from injury. Mike Gesicki's coming back from injury, and you know how much he was good with him. And one of my breakout rookies going into next year, Jalen Waddle. So even if Devontae Parker goes down, Will Fuller goes down, Mike Gesicki goes down, one of those guys goes down, they still have Jalen Waddle, one of the better big play receivers coming out of the draft. I'm glad the Dolphins saw it, how I saw it as well, how I like Jalen Waddle more than Devontae Smith coming out of the NFL draft. Tua, let's start with him. It all starts with the quarterback. He was 11th among quarterbacks when it comes to rushing. And I think it's just better that they added these two receivers because now hopefully he rushes a little less because that hip was hurt in college. And you can't throw off your foot or like off your back foot or just off your legs in general without turning your hips, or being a quarterback without turning your hips or the movement of your hips. So his hips being hurt or, tearing or popping out or whatever, that's not good. That's not a recipe for success, especially in the long run as a running quarterback. Tua and the Dolphins defense was the main thing that caught up to or helped him out because they were 17th in red zone touchdown percentage, 13th in red zone touchdowns. They were 27th in rushing touchdowns, so you knew they weren't going to run the ball too much. And they were 22nd in passing touchdowns. So they were all over the place. It seems like those are all holes that could have been plugged in by like an Aaron Rodgers or something. That's what I'm saying, like the ultimate Band-Aid. They're a great team on defense, and they have all the weapons, but if you put in like Aaron Rodgers, someone great, it would be even better. But they have Tua, whose confidence is, I don't know what it is because he's got a lot of criticism, so I don't know how he's really feeling. They also did that thing where they were switching him and Ryan Fitzpatrick back and forth. They got rid of Fitzpatrick, so that's some sign of probably improvement to him and, you know, his ego and just everything about him being a quarterback because there's a lot of things that go on with being a quarterback. But Tua just doesn't do it for me too much. I like his weapons, though. I would draft Jalen Waddle in the 10th round or later. I would draft Will Fuller probably in like the 6th round. But just know he's going to get hurt, so you have to have a backup plan because you know he's going to get hurt. It's happened every year for the last 4 years. You can't write this stuff, and it stinks, and you don't want to count on that, but he's going to get hurt. But what about my champion? The guy who helped me win a championship. That he was top 15 in points per game and opportunities per game while only having an 18% touchdown dependency. That means he scored very little, and he still was a top 15 running back. Myles Gaskin. Myles Gaskin went off in fantasy championship week, scored 32 fantasy points if you play PPR. He scored 3 touchdowns in total against the Oakland Raiders, coming back after he had COVID most of the year. He only had 4 points in the first half of that fantasy game, I remember, and finished with 32. I won by 4 points in the fantasy championship. Myles Gaskin is going into next year, the Washington product, is going to have a breakout year. If he stays healthy, once again, last year was only COVID problems. That's why he was out most of the time for COVID protocol. But now should be a different year. Hopefully that guy got the vaccine or something, because if he is available, he is going to give you top 10 running back numbers. To me, he is an RB2 next year and probably a 3rd round pick, like where you drafted Chris Carson, where you draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire kind of this next year. That's where you put Myles Gaskin. Myles Gaskin, it's also a sign of like, you know, in good faith for Myles Gaskin is that they didn't even draft another running back or even try to sign another running back this offseason. So that shows it. It's Myles Gaskin show. So Myles Gaskin going into next year, draft him. Trust me. He catches, he runs, he does it all. He's one of the bigger winners in the free agency and the NFL draft. Look to get him. Myles Gaskin, 3rd round pick. Write it down right now. Will Fuller, Devontae Parker, and Jalen Waddle. They are all not going to have a great amount of volume just because they like to run it too. The Dolphins run it 45% of the time. But still, you can't knock off that Will Fuller played with Deshaun Watson. So a lot of that stuff you're seeing was because of Deshaun Watson. So Deshaun Watson putting on the money, Will Fuller getting, you know, over 12 fantasy points 6 weeks straight. That was like a lot of it could be Deshaun Watson. And Tua is not Deshaun Watson at all. Hopefully these wide receivers have like, you know, a 20% like plus target share, but I feel like Will Fuller is the best one out of all of them. If you have to draft one of those receivers, that's why I said Jalen Waddle, just wait till 10th, 11th, because you know Devontae Parker or Will Fuller is going to get hurt. That's why Jalen Waddle will have his value. He's a 1st-round pick. They're not going to just keep him sidelined. They're ready to go. And they know that their guys get injured, so they're going to make sure that they give it to him. Mike Gesicki, also a guy who got hurt last year. He's like a back-end tight end 1 and has like tight end 2 kind of feel. He's maybe one of the top 10 tight ends. Maybe one of the top 10 tight ends, just because Tua always has a good rapport with tight ends. And when he was with Mike Gesicki, he did throw 700 yards just to Mike Gesicki alone last year. So that's good. We'll see if they develop it, but there's too many weapons there. I like Myles Gaskin a lot going into next year. Tua I wouldn't touch this year. He could be a late sneaky pick just because of all the weapons, but still I would stay away from him. Jalen Waddle get him late. Will Fuller get him around 6th, 7th round, but just know he's probably going to get hurt. And Devontae Parker, he's gotten hurt the past couple years too. I guess they just have too many brittle guys for me to want to commit. And I know I always say, too, that you shouldn't count on injuries, but if they get hurt every year for like 4 years straight, that's just history, and history usually repeats itself. Tua is the one I'm more weary of in this offense. It all is going to be on Tua's back. They're 22nd in touchdown passes. They're 27th in touchdown rushes. They're terrible in red zone touchdown percentage. They can't close it out. They're a perfect example of what I meant when I said a 20-20 team. They're perfect when it comes to their own 20-yard line going to the other 20-yard line through big plays and crazy plays and end around to throw to Jakeem Grant 40 yards down the field. And if they score off that, that's how they usually win. But if they can't score off that and they have to beat you and try to move the chains and go into the red zone and try to break it down, they don't do that. That's why they have Jason Sanders, who's one of the better kickers in fantasy. Draft Jason Sanders next year. Draft him late in the later rounds. He's a top 5 kicker going into fantasy, probably a top 3. He was the number 1 kicker last year, though. And you could say that I did draft him. I did pick him up off the waiver wire. And yes, that is because I always pay attention to the kickers. That's what I need to do. I need to have a top 10 kickers. I'll do that. I'll do that next time. Next episode, top 10 kickers in fantasy football going into next year. I'll do it. Because I love kickers, and I've even been in drafts where I've drafted Justin Tucker. I know he's a legend, and when he was like on fire and making all his kicks, he was great. But I drafted him in like the 6th, 7th round one year because I just wanted him that bad. So I love it. I also used to get Grostowski when he was balling on the Patriots. I always tried to look for the kickers because they'll give you that extra 10 to 5 points, and I won the championship by 4 points. Jason Sanders also kicked a game-winning kick that night against the Raiders in the championship game. And guess how many yards it was? 40. Guess how many points that is? 4. You can do the math. And yeah, that was a preview of the Miami Dolphins. Next week, when I come back on the show, I'm going to give you previews of the Bills, a couple of other teams I have in mind, and I'll give you my best kickers if you want to pay attention to the kickers. But stick around at the end of the show as I'm going to give you my top 5 rookies coming out of draft, the quarterbacks, the running backs, and the wide receivers, not really tight ends, but I'm going to throw it all at one on the next segment when we come back after this commercial break. We are the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
It's almost time to wrap it all up here at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for listening once again. We went over some team previews. We went over Aaron Rodgers and all of his beef. And who knows if he's going to be in the Packers? I don't think so. Probably Broncos or Raiders. Niners not looking as likely just because they got Trey Lance. Tua, I don't believe in too much, but I believe in Myles Gaskin a lot. I really do. And Ryan Fitzpatrick and Terry McLaurin. But that's all the football previews we were talking about earlier in the show. Now, I'm going to give you top 5 rookie running backs, quarterbacks, and receivers going into the next upcoming NFL season. The draft is done. These guys are on their teams now. So let's just get right into it. Number 5, I like Mac Jones, quarterback out of Alabama, now on the New England Patriots. He is going to get a good opportunity. And I think that since he's a great system quarterback, like I was saying earlier in the show, that Bill Belichick will give him the opportunity sooner rather than later, especially if Cam Newton's struggling. Cam Newton is on a 1-year contract. Mac Jones led, all college football in throwing percentage, passing yards, touchdowns, you name it. Mac Jones was number one and one of the better players of last year. I know he had better weapons, especially when he goes to New England. He's going to have Kendrick Bourne and other stuff. But if I'm drafting, if I'm going to get a quarterback and Cam Newton goes down, I'm getting Mac Jones. If he's on the waiver wire, I would pick him up just to see how it would work. But I like Mac Jones also because he's used to Nick Saban. He's used to the grumpy old man who only likes to do defense and do things his way and work really, really hard all the time and never have fun. It's what Nick Saban did. That's what Bill Belichick's going to do. Mac Jones is already ready for New England culture. Number 4, New York Jets getting Zach Wilson. I like Zach Wilson at number 4. I think that since they added Elijah Moore, they have Jamison Crowder, they added Corey Davis, they added Michael Carter, and they have Tevin Coleman as a pass-catching back. A lot of things are good for Zach Wilson. We've seen him throw for 73% of his passes, so there's no competition. There's no argument that he's not going to be able to throw it on the money. It's just, can the Jets protect him? Can the Jets have good play calling? They have Robert Saleh, so he's a new coach. He's defensive coach, but he is a new coach. Whole change in the culture. He's the number 4 fantasy quarterback I would like going into next year. Number 3 fantasy quarterback going into next year, Trey Lance, and he's probably top 2 dynasty quarterback getting, just because him going on the San Francisco Niners will probably be the best rookie situation out of all these rookie situations. The Niners are ready now. They're 2 years removed from a Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's also a great coach in a running-heavy offense with a running-heavy quarterback. What do we love about fantasy? Run-heavy quarterbacks. Problem is right now, Jimmy G is probably going to start. So I don't know if you could be too confident about drafting him just because Jimmy G is going to be there for a bit. And what if Jimmy G kind of closes out the year and has a great year? What if Jimmy G doesn't lose too often? He wins 70% of his games. So when he actually plays, he's good. So Jimmy G could still be in it, but Trey Lance has shown that he has absolutely everything. He runs, he could throw. He's thrown 28 touchdowns and no interceptions in 2019 when he played a full season. Trey Lance is a smart, great quarterback. There's no doubt in my mind that he would be the best rookie out of all these quarterbacks if he were to have the starting position after week 1, but he doesn't. It's still, everything's up in the air, and it's a quarterback competition between him and Jimmy G. We'll see how it goes from there. The number 2 quarterback on my list of fantasy quarterbacks going into next year, Trevor Lawrence. He is supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks of all time, especially coming out of the draft. He's also going to Urban Meyer and the Jacksonville Jaguars, who's a new head coach, new scene, new everything. So you don't know how that's going to go. But they added Travis Etienne for him, so they gave him his boy at running back from Clemson. They have Marvin Jones, DJ Chark, and Laviska Shenault Jr. They have three pretty solid receivers, along with 2 solid running backs with James Robinson as well. Trevor Lawrence can also get mobile. He is not a running quarterback all the time, but he could get mobile, like Aaron Rodgers. He knows how to roll out of the pocket. He's not stiff. And he's going to be able to start from week 1, which gives him great value. I say if you were to get him, I would wait till past the 10th round. Just wait past the 10th round. There's too many great quarterbacks. I could get Ryan Fitzpatrick and still get the same production out and have him fall out of the draft. So I'm not worried about it. Trevor Lawrence, probably the number 2 quarterback. And number one quarterback going into fantasy next year is Chicago Bears, Justin Fields. Reason why is because Trevor Lawrence, yes, he is a great thrower, and he does have good weapons, but Justin Fields also runs. And not only is he going to be able to run, but Matt Nagy has that whole offense set up to where he could get mobile, and he's going to do a lot of fun things with Justin Fields. And we know that Andy Dalton is not going to be the quarterback for long over there, because Justin Fields, especially if he's on the field, he is going to be a top fantasy quarterback like Kyler Murray. Especially with Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, who's going to break out. Watch, trust me. Darnell Mooney, a second-year player removed. And Allen Robinson, one of the top, which is a wide receiver, hands down, one of the best receivers in the league. Wide receiver 1, top talent. With Dave Montgomery, who has top talent potential. He's young. Dave Montgomery also finished the year scoring an average of 20 fantasy points per game. Justin Fields, they moved up to get him. I think that he's in the area around Ryan Tannehill and like around Ryan Tannehill. That's how much points I could see Kyler Murray scoring. He's like a quarterback, like outside 10 to 15. That's where he could be. But I feel like he would be the best fantasy quarterback going into next year. I don't know what you guys think. Let me know at GSMC Fantasy Football on Twitter. If you're disgruntled, let me know. Yell at me. Put a bunch of exclamation marks so I know you yelled. Let's go over the top 5 running backs. Now in this last segment, number 5 goes to Michael Carter. Trey Sermon, San Francisco running back. Only reason why I don't say Michael Carter too. Trey Sermon has a better line. He's on a better team with a better run scheme. But also, when is he going to start? Because they have Wayne Gallman, Raheem Mostert, who's the real starting running back, and Jeff Wilson Jr., who's not no scrub. Trey Sermon could fall in the cracks and be lost, and they won't even get to use him or barely misuse him or just misuse him. And so I feel like Trey Sermon doesn't have the full opportunity. He did rush for over 4,000 yards in his stay at Ohio State. 2 seasons of over 1,000 yards rushing. Last year he had like 900 yards rushing. Trey Sermon is one of the better running backs. He's one of the steals in the draft, especially for the Niners. But in a fantasy sense, going into next year, I have him as my 5th. Number 4, you already heard me, Michael Carter. I've already talked about him. He's a good running back. He rushed for over 1,000 yards, caught for over 200 yards. He's a third down back at over 8 yards per carry. I already talked about everything I need to about Michael Carter in the last team preview. If you didn't listen to it, rewind it just a little bit. If you for some reason skipped all the way to the end of the show, I gave my whole Jets preview, and I was talking about how Michael Carter will fit in that offense. I feel like he's going to have the show. Michael P. Ryan and Tevin Coleman do not scare me one bit. That's why he's the number 4 fantasy running back going into next year. The number 3 fantasy running back going into next year is Travis Etienne, and he's going into that 2 running back system with James Robinson. He had over 5,000 rushing yards in his career at Clemson. Etienne should be a 3-down back, but right now he still has to share time with James Robinson and a little bit of Carlos Hyde just for a couple weeks. But I feel like he's going to be a beast. He broke more tackles than any running back in college football last season. So he's a tough runner. He would be probably a low-end RB2, maybe even fringe RB1 if he gets the show, just because Trevor Lawrence is his boy. So no one knows him more than Trevor Lawrence. And that rapport I was talking about, where Zach Wilson and Michael Carter are just going to feel closer just because they were brought out in the same draft class. It's even times 10 with Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence, just for the fact that Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne went to the same school together. It's a match made in heaven. I like that going forward. Number 2, I have Javonte Williams, running back of the Denver Broncos. He's just going to have to only go against Melvin Gordon, who has yet to prove himself. Melvin Gordon's been trying to prove himself for the past, that's going on to his 3rd year, because 2 years ago, remember, he wanted that big contract. He's like, I want the Chargers to pay me. And then he got hurt, and Austin Eckler came and did way better than him. He's like, oh, no. Go back. And then you saw that Melvin Gordon's all right. He's not an RB1. So next year, don't draft Melvin Gordon. Javonte Williams, I would draft. Travis Etienne, I would draft. Michael Carter, I would draft. All those guys I would draft in the 8th to 12th round. I would rather get running backs more than I'd rather get receivers. Just because there's a little bit of running backs and there's always more receivers out there. You never know. Maybe someone doesn't even draft Corey Davis and Corey Davis falls out. There's a bunch of receivers out there. Tyler Boyd, just think about every team, and they have at least 2 to 3 receivers someone's going to draft. So there's a lot more receivers. Javonte Williams rushed for over 1,000 yards, averaged over 7 yards per carry, was one of the better running backs on that North Carolina backfield. Him on the Broncos, especially if they had Aaron Rodgers and that potential still there. Oh, it'll be such a good matchup. If they don't, I would drop him under Travis Etienne, but still have him over Michael Carter and Trey Sermon on my list just because he has less to fight for. Otherwise, I would have Trey Sermon on the list because Trey Sermon has a better line, and Trey Sermon also is a really, really good running back. Oh, guess what? Number 1 is, of course, Najee Harris. And you know why? Because Le'Veon Bell, when he played for the Steelers, he had 25.6 touches per game, or per start. Then DeAngelo Williams, remember when he was balling? 22.8. What about James Conner? 20.8. What about when Stephen Ridley was even balling for a little bit? 17. So no matter what, even if it's a running back by committee like the Steelers like to do, this Najee Harris is still going to get his 20 touches a game. He's going to be an RB1. He's NFL ready. He's a 3-down back. And he has great home run ability. He's 230 pounds, 6'2", huge. He is in like the Antonio Gibson range of where you should draft him next year. I would draft him in the 2nd or 3rd round. I would just take the flyer on 2nd because you never know what you're going to get with him. And he has a very, very, very high ceiling. And that's, his potential's out the roof with how the Steelers could use him. So who knows how it's going to work too with that Steelers offense. But we know what Mike Tomlin likes to do. He likes to feature a number 1 running back most of the time if that running back can prove himself. And Najee Harris is going to prove himself. That's why they picked him in the 1st round. Yeah, that was obvious. And then let's move on to the top 5 receivers coming out of the NFL draft now that they are on their respective teams. Number 5, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I know what you're thinking, but there's Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, even on the Cardinals. Why? Well, the reason being is because the Lions only have Breshad Perryman, Victor Bolden, Khalif Raymond, and Quintez Cephas, which are all these people that you would never draft in fantasy. Oh, I'm sorry. They got Tyrell Williams, too. I thought he was still on the Raiders. My apologies. Yeah, and they have Jared Goff. So Jared Goff is going to have to throw to someone. The USC product is an LA boy, so maybe they'll have that in common. They'll talk about some LA together. He was also supposed to be a higher pick because he was one of USC's better receivers, but he didn't get picked too early. He got picked in like the 4th round. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be one of the he's the definition of a best case scenario in a terrible situation. He's the best of a worse situation. That's just what it is. The Lions have no receivers. He's the best one out of all of them. They definitely drafted kind of high for him, so they're going to utilize him. They're going to. Number 4, Elijah Moore from the Jets. The Jets, they could save $10 million in cap space if they get rid of Jamison Crowder at some point. So if Elijah Moore proves himself, hey, guess what? Corey Davis on the left, Denzel Mims on the right, Elijah Moore in the middle. And then Zach Wilson will be able to spread and sling rock because he's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in history and everything. We'll see how it goes. I have no doubt in Zach Wilson as a capable thrower, as more as I have doubt in just the Jets as a franchise and how they haven't won since like the 60s and how they just always have, terrible luck. It's just awful. Elijah Moore is a great college receiver and coming out of Ole Miss, caught over 1,000 yards last year. You could trust him. Elijah Moore, definitely the number 4 receiver on my list of top 5 receivers coming out of the drafts on their respective teams now. Number 3, Jalen Waddle on the Miami Dolphins. What you like about him is he's part of the 3 wide receiver set. That's what they do in Miami. And we just talked about it too, that they have Devontae Parker and Will Fuller, yes. But Jalen Waddle did play with Tua. That was his old quarterback. So they already have that report down. And Devontae Parker and Will Fuller, one of them is bound to get hurt. or Gesicki. So then that makes him the 2 option. And I hope, knock on wood, nothing happens to both those receivers, but it could happen. It happened last year, and it could happen again that there's none of those receivers, and Jalen Waddle, especially since he has fresh legs, he didn't play too much in college because he had to sit behind all the greats, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, all these other people. So he has big home run ability with fresh legs on a team with this quarterback that he played with in college. Yeah. Jalen Waddle, 10th round. Get him in the later rounds because you're not going to get him early because you could still get Marvin Jones would still probably be as good or maybe not if a little better out of the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's a lot more options out there. Especially Jalen Waddle, I would still even maybe get Cole Beasley even over Jalen Waddle. So later rounds, 10th round, 11th round, Jalen Waddle. Number 2, as much as this pains me, Devontae Smith. The problem is that Jalen Hurts was his quarterback, and they only have Jalen Reagor, who I do not trust one bit. And with the Dolphins, they have all those receivers, and Tua's not the most capable, but still, Jalen Hurts could throw it deep to Devontae Smith because that's all he has to do. And Devontae Smith seems like a guy who's they're gonna put him in, and then they're gonna try to use him as much as they can, like a Deshaun Jackson. I could see Devontae Smith getting 1,000 yards on the Eagles. Realistically, it's my personal bias is I don't want him because he's too tiny, but it's not gonna hurt him the first year. He's not gonna just get knocked out the first game and it's like, oh, he's too tiny, so now he can't play forever. No, it's his first year. No one's gonna know how to maybe handle him or guard him on the deep ball. Maybe they could press him at the line. That's how they're going to get him because he's a tinier guy. Put an aggressive safety and aggressive corner on him. But once again, he's in the NFC East. The football team has the best defense. The corners of the Cowboys are, I guess, good. The corners of the Giants aren't really that good. It's NFC East. So he should have 5 games or 6 games of opportunity where he could go off almost any day. And they're going to make him the guy. And I've just been reading reports that Devontae Smith, they want to put him more and more into this offense, and he's going to be an outside receiver, and they're going to literally utilize him as much as they can, and the way they'll probably just get him open, literally, is what they would do with all these little guys, the little slot guys. You just set him on a motion. Oh, no, like Tyreek Hill. Oh, no, he's on a motion. Now I have to chase him. Oh, he's motioning back. No, he's motioning back. He messed up the whole defensive scheme. Like, he made a show like what we're going to do on our play already if it's man or zone. And then he just goes deep, and then he exposes defense. Now it's just up to Jalen Hurts, but since Jalen Hurts has good rushing ability, I feel like you're going to stack the box and they're going to be able to throw it deep to Devontae Smith at least this first year. Devontae Smith is the number 2 receiver to me. And the number 1 fantasy receiver for obvious reasons, Jamar Chase with his boy Joe Burrow. Easy. We've seen Jamar Chase destroy Trayvon Diggs. We've seen Jamar Chase destroy Patrick Surtain, the number 1 cornerback, not the number 1 cornerback taken off the draft, but one of the top cornerbacks taken off the draft. He has a Justin Jefferson type of stature, caught over 20 touchdowns, caught over 1,700 yards, over 100 receptions. You know how I feel about Jamar Chase. He is a top 5 round, not top 5 pick, top 5 round wide receiver, any skilled position player, doesn't matter. You pick him in the first 5 rounds. Jamar Chase should have over 1,000 yards receiving next year. He is a dog. He is an absolute dog at receiver. Best one out of all these receivers. You know where to find us at GSMC Fantasy Football. We are available Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Like, share, and subscribe. You know the deal. We're here to make you into champions. Little by little, each episode by episode, we will work towards it. Like I said, I'll give you a list of the best kickers in fantasy next week and some more team previews as we head down and count down the days until we can finally draft in fantasy football. Thank you for being the best, and we love you here at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. And have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.